Hi, it's Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of the Contrarian. Happy Constitution Day. That's right. I know you had it marked on your calendars, and now is the time to bring out the cake and celebrate because we still have a Constitution. There's no one better to talk to us about the Constitution and the state of public opinion about our Constitution than Nick Penniman. He is the founder and CEO of Issue One. Welcome, Nick. It is such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Great to see you.
Great to see you. You have done a poll in connection with YouGov. What did you find?
Well, we wanted to basically test whether or not Americans understand the need for a balance of powers in this country. That whether or not they understand the fundamental premise of the Constitution, and luckily, they do. They get it. They understand that when one branch runs out of control, in this case, the executive branch, that it jeopardizes the entire project of democracy. It jeopardizes our ability to govern sanely and soberly. What we found is, just to give you a couple striking numbers,
Yeah.
79% of independents said that President Trump is going too far in trying to get his agenda passed without congressional approval. 21% of Republicans said the same thing, 95% of Democrats. But listen, that's 80% of independents, 1 out of 5 Republicans, and basically 100% of Democrats. That's a positive sign that people
Yes.
get it. They get it. The second number I'll give you is that 79% of voters said the primary job of members of Congress is to represent their constituents rather than rubber stamping whatever the president wants. So I think people in this pretty cynical age about the American people, I think in fact what we found is that you shouldn't be cynical about the American people, that they're watching what's happening and they get it and they understand that it's that we're off the tracks here.
And we might have a definitional problem. When people ask, how important is democracy, or where do you rank democracy? We have gotten kind of discouraging results. But what you've done is identify certain threats to democracy and ask people whether they feel comfortable with those trends. And that seems to have gotten closer to the nub of the issue.
Yeah, and you're correct. If you just ask them about, say, democracy, for most people, they think voting.
Yeah.
Right? Some might think free speech. But it's way too multifarious a word for people to latch onto. But when you ask about balance of power, that focuses the mind, it focuses the conversation. And so, we actually had people rank in order of importance to them, what the biggest problems the country are facing right now. And the imbalance of power came out as number 4. So it was like, you can expect healthcare, inflation, jobs, imbalance of power. So, and then environment and choice and gun control are all below that. Now, we did this before the Kirk shooting, so maybe the gun control numbers changed a bit, but that's also encouraging that people
Yes.
are willing to say that just below their economic well-being, basically, this is the next thing that they're most concerned about.
Now, you are also coming out today with some helpful suggestions, because this, of course, is supposed to be a tripartite system. And right now we have so much power moving to Article 2, which is the president. One would argue we got to shift some of that power back and get Congress to do its job. Talk to us about your suggestions and how important it is for Congress to reclaim its proper role.
Yeah, I mean, the founders defined Congress in Article 1 for a reason, not Article 2, not Article 3. It was supposed to be the centerpiece of our democracy because, number 1, it's the most deliberative, and number 2, it's the most representative. And number 3, frankly, it's the most arduous too. And they knew that, that you could, if you didn't have arduous processes, the country could get jerked around pretty quickly. And so they put Article 1 at the center. What's happened over decades, not the last 7 months, but decades, is that Article 1 has been eroded. The powers of Congress have been eroded, in part by the Supreme Court, but in part too because Congress itself has abdicated its power, and in part too because Congress has become so dysfunctional in so many ways that it's no longer seen as a problem-solving body, which is why some people, believe in a strong executive, just someone who can get stuff done, basically. But when we talk about, a fix-it agenda for Congress, we've got 6 basic ideas. Number one, Congress should regulate foreign trade. The president shouldn't be able to wake up and just decide that he's going to, slap a 15% or a 45% or 115% tariff on a country because he feels like it. Imagine, tariffs or taxes. Imagine if he was able to do that to the income tax.
Yes.
There really would be violence in the streets if he was doing that to the income tax. Number two, who gets to declare war? The Constitution is very clear about that. Congress does. And just as well as I do, Jennifer, like this has gone back a long time now where we've slid into wars because of executive authority that we shouldn't have been in, and Congress had no say. So this is, again, a longstanding problem. Deploying troops domestically. This is incredibly pertinent right now as Trump tries to ramp up his deployment of the National Guard. Who has the right to do that? And what we say is the president, under certain emergency conditions, should have the right to do that, but that ability should expire after 15 days unless Congress approves of that action or extends it. We basically have the same kind of check in place around emergency powers, that there should be a small, couple week period in which president can use emergency powers, but then Congress has to affirm that the president has the right to continue using those powers. Safeguarding elections, one of the most ironic shifts in the last 6-7 years, and you're a former Republican, Jen, is this federalization of the elections, this attempt to federalize the elections through the Department of Homeland Security. For years and years, Republicans says, no, leave it up to the states. And now what we're seeing with President Trump is that he is trying to basically take as much federal control of the elections as possible. So this reaffirms that the states control our elections, not the federal government. And then finally, the power of the purse. This goes right to the core of DOGE and all the cuts that have been made. When Congress appropriates money, yes, the executive branch has the ability to find savings here and there, but they don't have the executive does not have the right to obliterate an entire program, which is exactly what they've been doing. So, these are not rocket science. These things should be seen as basic principles. But we're going to have to, when we see the opportunity, we're going to either have to enact this package as a whole in a bipartisan way, or we're going to have to do them one by one and try to put the executive back in a little bit of a box.
One of the impediments of putting them back in the box is a extraordinary Supreme Court decision that held that the president essentially is immune from any criminal prosecution. There's a lot of qualification and a lot of toing and froing, but essentially it means you can never criminally prosecute a president for anything of sort of public importance. How badly do you think that has affected this balance, which, as you said, was growing at a slow but steady rate? And has that supercharged the problem now?
Yeah, I think it has, in the same way that the Citizens United decision supercharged money in politics, right? Citizens United was a permission slip for billionaires and big corporations to start spending egregiously in elections. I think that this is a similar situation. Like the case itself, the decision itself is somewhat narrowly written, but I think that this president and some of the people around him have taken it as a blank check to do whatever they want. So, I think that the limits of that decision will get tested at some point, but right now, the theory in the White House is let it rip.
Exactly, which folks underscores the necessity of putting people of good character and devotion to the Constitution in the highest office in the land. Let me shift ever so slightly, although it is right in your wheelhouse, and that is the attack on the First Amendment. We had the horrific murder of Charlie Kirk, which no responsible public official has failed to condemn. And people should be very clear about that. There is no one in either party who is rooting for this outcome or condoning this. But now what we've seen is the president and the vice president and his minions have taken that event and said, we're now going to go after everyone on the left. We haven't yet, as of this conversation, determined what this guy's motives were or determined that there's any connection between what he did and any ideology or any group or any nonprofit. Is this what the Supreme Court and what the founders used to fear, which was a pretextual suppression and censorship? After all, it's the First Amendment and it's first for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, obviously the killing of Charlie Kirk was an absolute tragedy, but it used to be, Jen, that we understood that those types of acts were the acts of a deranged human being.
Yeah.
Whether they were deranged because of something their friends said or a novel they read or a movie they watched or a video game, or maybe they heard a politician speak and it resonated in some weird way with them. This is a deranged individual in the same way that Charlie Manson was a deranged individual listening to, Beatles records backwards and deciding that he needed to kill people. So like I just think that we need to isolate, in this case, the killer from the larger issues of speech in society. And it's my Republican friends who have always been the most adamant that speech should be as free as possible. That in fact, there have even been for a long time conservative concerns about the notion of hate speech, that anything should even be defined as hate speech and therefore prosecutable. So what worries me now is that, and that's the word I believe. I believe in unlimited speech, and it deeply worries me at this point that this president and Stephen Miller, with Pam Bondi, that they're going to exploit this moment to try to do, root canals of liberal and progressive organizations, and also threaten the press. I mean, Trump is on video, I believe it was this morning or yesterday, fielding a question from an ABC reporter, and he said, "You know what? Maybe we need to go after you too."
Yes.
So it's quickly metastasizing into a really, really dangerous threat to free speech in this country. And again, Jen, you can speak to this as well as I can. Like my Republican roots, my Republican friends are the ones that used to stand hard against that, and we need them to do that again. I saw that Senator Langford from Oklahoma, said we need to separate out this act of killing from free speech. We need to stand for free speech and for the Bill of Rights while we condemn this act of killing.
Absolutely. The other kind of constitutional earthquake, if you will, in the last few months has been the deployment of military forces on the streets of US cities and the supercharging of ICE, that we now have raids without individualized suspicion, without any kind of basis other than the fact that someone looks Hispanic and they may hear them speaking Spanish and they may be outside a Home Depot. How concerned are you about in fact, the founders were extremely worried about, and that was a standing army that gets turned against the population, and Fourth Amendment, not first, but fourth, pretty high up there, illegal searches and seizures and a lack of particularized probable or reasonable suspicion before you stop somebody.
Yeah, it's that part that worries me most. Listen, I think we all know we have an immigration problem in this country. I think that we know that we need to, some of us believe we need to be more aggressive about immigration and making sure that, the people who are here have gone through the right process to get here and stay here and become citizens. But the potential denial of due process and the false suspicions, going to a Home Depot parking lot and grabbing a bunch of guys because they speak Spanish, that is absolutely unconstitutional. It is against the basic civil rights and liberties that we have always protected in this country. So I'm deeply concerned about it. But I think if I can just say that some of these things are tricky because you do have to separate the wheat from the chaff. Like most Americans agree, and Trump got elected because he wanted to clamp down on illegal immigration. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a legitimate policy stance and a legitimate function of the government, is to make sure that people are doing things legally in this country. And then there's the overreach. So
Yes,
you have to
exactly.
constantly disentwine the overreach from the other function that people actually like.
Right. And you are now seeing in polls specifically of Hispanic voters that he's 20 points underwater. And the response is, we didn't vote for that. And we can all debate whether people should have been paying more attention and all the rest of it. It doesn't matter at this point. What he is doing now seems to be very unpopular. So last question for you. We still live in a democracy. People ask us all the time, what can I do? I'm just one person, or I live in a Republican state. My congressmen and senators never come here.
Yeah.
Give our folks a few things that people can do that is a concrete, specific action that will enhance our constitutional protections.
Yeah, I mean, number one, most people have social media. You just need to speak up. And even if your words aren't perfect and you don't think you're the most eloquent writer in the world, posting something on your social media and saying, I'm worried about the Constitution, I'm worried about the direction we're heading in as a country, that's really important because we need more people speaking up, and we need to kind of normalize and broaden the sense of concern that's out there. Again, we saw it in the polls, 79%. People think that the president is basically out of control at this point. So we need those people to not be silent and to say it. Number one. Number two, certainly put pressure on your members of Congress. Even if you live in a Democratic district, call up your member and say, listen, I'm profoundly concerned right now about our republic, not just about the typical causes, healthcare, immigration, jobs, inflation, right? But I'm concerned about the state of our republic. If politicians, especially Republican politicians, hear that more and more, then it's going to create a better environment for groups like mine that work with both sides to be able to get the stuff done that I talked about getting done, to, put the president back in a box. And then number three is join groups like ours. I mean, we're at issue1.org. I suppose I should plug that.
Absolutely.
And we're always looking to mobilize more people and grow the coalition on behalf of the Constitution.
Well, thank you for all you do. And you're right, you have to reactivate that sense of constitutional responsibility that used to be very prevalent on the Republican side and has now, as you say, been distorted, warped, destroyed by the current president. So thank you for all you do. Folks, you should absolutely take a look at the poll we talked about and the suggestions for Article 1. And it's something you can ask your member of Congress. Are you in favor of these things, or are you not in favor of these things? So thank you, Nick, for such an important discussion, and thanks for everything you do.
Thank you, Jen. Keep up the great work.